Hello, everyone. I am your host for the evening. My name is Steph Wentworth, and I'm joined by three wonderful ladies who all work in sustainability in the world of motorsports. But for three different teams, we've got Jess of Motorsport UK, Parveer of Aston Martin, and Cece from Enovation Consulting. And so I'm going to hand over to the ladies now so that they can introduce themselves, what their role is. And so you can hear about them from them, really, because you don't want to hear it from me. So let's start with Jess, who is with Motorsport UK.
Hey everyone, so I'm Jess. For those of you that don't know, Motorsport UK is the governing body for motorsport for all four-wheeled sports in the UK. So we provide the permits, the licenses, and the volunteers for all the events. And that's from our big events like the Formula One Grand Prix in Silverstone to the up and down the country where people go around every weekend doing kind of smaller events across 13 disciplines. So that's everything from esports to circuit racing to drift to drag racing, rallying. So it's very varied. I've been working in sustainability for about 15 years. I started at the BBC. I then spent most of my career at a not-for-profit called Business in the Community, mainly working with corporates, and then joined Motorsport UK about a year ago to a role that didn't exist beforehand. So it was a new role, a new function, and I've spent the last year kind of working out what our strategy is. I think the last thing I'll say on that is that for us at Motorsport UK, sustainability is across all 17 sustainable development goals. So I spend probably half my time on environmental matters, and then half our time on inclusion and equality diversity work. So very much split between those, and we realise that both are really important to having a sustainable sport.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jess. Should we come to Parveer next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Parveer. I work for the Formula One Aston Martin team as the Environment and Sustainability Lead. Prior to working here, I worked for a construction company known as Taylor Widrow. They're a tier 1 contracting firm. And prior to that, I was at university and I did a degree in geography at the University of Exeter. Similarly to Jess, this is a newly created role, and the sustainability world in motorsports has really exploded in the last year, I would say. So it's an exciting place to be.
Fantastic. And finally, last but not least, Cece.
Hi, so I am a Sustainable Innovation and Carbon Analyst at Enovation Consulting. And we work with circuits, teams like Williams, Sauber, Impulse Solutions. So whether that's impact assessment, accreditation, help with the strategy. And my role as an analyst really is the quant side of it. So, carbon footprinting, LCA, that kind of stuff.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, ladies. Just a reminder to anyone who is watching, and thank you to everyone who has joined us, that this is being recorded and it will be available on the Girls on Track Facebook page once the webinar is finished. So you can always come back, and if you don't have time to save the full webinar, you'll be able to watch it back. And also, if you do have any questions for the lovely ladies, please pop them down in the Q&A function. We'll try and get to them, but you've already sent in a list of some wonderful questions that we're going to get to answering very shortly. But if you have any more, just pop them down in the Q&A box and we should be we'll do our best to get round to them. So I guess the first question really is, what does sustainability look like in motorsport now? What does it look like from your perspective? Throw it out to any of you who wants to answer.
I'll go first. So for us, in terms of the environmental side, we've got kind of a few major projects. The first is, where are the emissions coming from? So we're looking at our 5,000 events, basically trying to understand what disciplines emit the most. And then within the disciplines, is it the competition? Is it the spectators? Is it the buildings? That's a fairly lengthy activity and has taken us all year, obviously analysing all that data. But from that will make us make kind of sensible decisions about what to focus on. We're not a big team, but we should be focusing on where the biggest impact is. The other things we're doing is we're trying to educate the community. So we have 80,000 license holders, 720 different clubs, all at very different places in their environmental journey. So I spend a lot of time going up and down the country talking to people that might not have ever really had climate conversations before. Some are absolute geniuses and know more than I do. So it's also trying to like amplify those voices and then really help the people that need it. And then the final bit we're looking in terms of the environment is kind of the innovation. So motorsport doesn't want to be the problem. It wants to have some of the solutions, and some of the safety features we've seen in motorsport has gone into kind of standard road car usage. So how do we look at fuels and different methods of propulsion to ensure that we kind of lead the way there? From a diversity and inclusion perspective, it's really about diversifying the demographics. I'm sure if you think of the average license holder, you can picture whoever you're picturing is probably our white demographics. It is overwhelmingly male. It is older, so a lot of our license holders are over 55, and it's very white. So it's looking at different initiatives to diversify that, but also for when people come into the sport, that it's a friendly and lovely place to be, because we want people to come into the sport and stay in the sport.
And kind of just on that, we'll come to you, Parveer. Kind of what does sustainability look like from your perspective? You know, in Formula One as well, it's a very public sport. It's, you know, the biggest motorsport comes to mind immediately. And how does it kind of look like from your perspective, the changes that are kind of being made within sustainability?
Yeah. So, oh, sorry. Was that?
We'll refer it to both of you. We'll start with you, Parveer, and come back to you, Jess.
So yeah, I similarly to Jess, it's been an exercise of kind of assessing data, collecting data, assessing data, and then going from there and, you know, creating a strategy. In terms of Formula One, recently the FIA stated that all teams need to have the FIA 3-star accreditation by June 23, otherwise they can't race. And that's stated, I think, in Article 2.6 of the sporting regulations. So it's really imperative that we do start to consider the environment within our operations, and with the FIA, you know, putting that within the sporting regulations, I think it's created a bit of a buzz around the environment, and like there's going to be a snowball effect. So more and more regulations are going to come in place to support the environment. From my perspective in the team, it's involved setting up an environmental management system to attain the FIA 3-star accreditation. And we've also successfully gone on to achieve the ISO 14001 standard, which is a bit more of a stringent standard. And we also have plans to implement sustainable events, sustainable procurement, and as Jess said, just innovate within the industry to see how we can reduce our environmental impact.
Fantastic. Jess, did you have anything to add to that?
I think I agree. I think at the moment it's a mix between some things we have to do. So we also have the 3-star accreditation, and that's kind of come from us from above, from the FIA. And we also have conversations with venues that mean that we can't compete on their land unless we withhold to some environmental regulations. And then the other stuff is, how do we work with the community to basically change the perception of people that think motorsport is unsustainable? So how do we work with people to kind of try and change behaviours so that it is sustainable and it is seen as beneficial to the world rather than polluting?
And Cece, we've talked a lot about innovating, and you work for Enovation. Tell us kind of what sustainability looks like from your perspective and with your team, and kind of how that works with your role in motorsport.
Yeah, so obviously building on what we've spoken about, this sort of external pressure from governing bodies like FIA and FIM. But, you know, another part of it is also understanding outside of these frameworks, what ambitions do our clients also have, environmental, social, and how we can make recommendations to improve those certain ambitions and help our clients get to where they want to be. So just building on that.
Fantastic. Anything to add? Do any of the three of you have anything to add further, just kind of on how sustainability is moving forward now? We'll go to the next question. We'll bring it onto it. But Cece, you just touched on this a little bit, but how is it in communicating the importance of sustainability with the fans? Because obviously motorsport is very community based as a sport, and there are, you know, a side of motorsport who don't want to see, or who don't think that sustainability is important. They like motorsport the way it is, but it's very much, you know, a large part of it is the younger generation really kind of pushing for the sustainability. So how difficult is it to communicate that sustainability message with fans while also maintaining, you know, motorsport is motorsport and there are some things that we can't change in favor of sustainability? How does that work?
I think firstly, it's, you know, I think in general sustainability has had a big problem with greenwashing. So it's getting that sort of positioning right, and, you know, not just making big claims, you know, actually having the numbers and measurements to back that up, you know, whether that's, oh, a new initiative and, you know, how many people have this benefited, you know, what are the carbon reductions that you've actually been able to achieve. So I think there's that kind of aspect to it. And also, I think motorsport is kind of finding its own niche in the sort of comms realm of, like you said, that there are parts of it you can't change. But I think actually helping fans to understand kind of where the environmental hotspots actually are, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about that. So yeah, I think greenwashing is probably just the biggest thing, I would say.
Jess, you're nodding away. Anything to add?
I massively agree. Like when we talk about things, we can't just say everything's wonderful without the data to like back it up. It needs to be authentic. Otherwise, I mean, who would be kidding? But one of the things I'm always really aware of is I don't stress about the people that in 2023 are still climate deniers. Like, I don't have new information. If you haven't already got all the information that's out there
I can't change your mind.
In the ether, yeah, you've made a decision not to believe that. And like, luckily that is a small minority. What I do spend a lot of time in communicating is people that think it's too difficult or are a bit scared because they think it's loads of work, or just get like really overwhelmed with a lot of the jargon. Like I spend a lot of time trying to like simplify it and be like, actually the things that you do in your house to try and be more sustainable, a lot of that can just be applied in just a bigger scale when you're looking at a sport or in a business. So it's trying to be like, yeah, authentic, but also just quite simple, because not everyone's going to be a sustainability professional.
Absolutely. And Parveer, do you have anything to add? I feel like we've covered quite a lot there.
Yeah, I think I agree with Cece and Jess. I think it's about taking the fan base on the journey with you. So us right now, we're on at the beginning of our sustainability journey. And it's really important that we take our fans along with us and kind of extend our sphere of influence to ensure that everyone is embracing sustainable behavior and protecting the environment.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's step away from sustainability on a motorsport level and talk about you guys personally, because one thing about Girls on Track is that it's a fantastic community for, you know, looking forward to building these girls' own careers. So kind of going back, how did you get into kind of the sustainability aspect? I know all three of you have kind of very different pathways to how you've managed to make it to sustainability now, but there's, you know, a lot of girls here wondering kind of, oh, what do I need to study? Like, how young do I need to study to get into these? Parveer, I know you just mentioned that you were at university doing geography, which is, you know, not you know, motorsport related at all. So how did you kind of go from that to where you are now?
Yeah, so I, like so many people in school at 16 and 17, not really knowing what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I took the advice of my French teacher, who said, like, the best thing to do is do what you enjoy and to do what you're good at. So on that basis, I chose to do geography at university. And I know lots of people do geography at university, but I really was just so passionate about trying to work out why the world was the way it is, and just, like, you know, figuring out why earthquakes happen, why glaciers form, like really mundane earth system stuff. But through doing that degree, I got even more passionate about like protecting the planet and implementing sustainability, because with, you know, global warming and anthropogenic climate change, we're going to lose all of these beautiful landscapes and all this scenery that we get from like all the ecosystem services we get from the environment, we'll lose it. Not to mention all the devastating effects that are going to occur with, floods and increased forest fires. So yeah, I was just really passionate about sustainability, did geography, and then was applying for jobs after I graduated, and I managed to get a job with a construction firm, and that really like opened my eyes into sustainability. They put me on a course. It was I can't remember, I think it was environmental management systems, and that just, I got really passionate about upskilling businesses, implementing a system to ensure the environment is protected, and then it's kind of snowballed from there. And yeah, now I'm in motorsports.
And now you're here. I think it's a real testament to the fact that a lot of these girls don't know what they want to do until later on, and I think it's a testament that even though you don't know what you want to do what you enjoy, and it will lead you kind of wherever, because there are so many pathways to getting into motorsport. You don't have to study engineering. There are so many different ways to get into it. So actually, Jess, let's come to you next, because you also didn't necessarily study sustainability. I think it was international relations economics.
Yeah, I kind of messed up my A-levels and went through clearing. And I was like, someone offered me a place in politics, and I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. When I was 15, I remember going on a school trip to the Body Shop and hearing about all their kind of initiatives. And I was like, that's really cool, but I didn't really think it was a job. So I went to uni, and then when I was doing kind of one of my first jobs out of uni, I was the intern, and they were like, oh, can you run our CSR activities? And like I said, this was a completely different conversation we were having around the environment. I was taking people's bins away to put a recycling bin in. That was the level of the environmental policy. But it got onto that point of I realized I really wanted a for-purpose career. So that's when I moved to the charity sector, because I was like, I want to do something that makes a difference. And then really liked the kind of bit that was I always think that kind of responsible business and sustainability is that bit around convincing people to spend their money in a more mindful way as well. So just changing kind of how we consume. I loved my old job. I was there for 8 years. I really liked working with corporates. And then just during the pandemic, I was like, I can't sit at my desk anymore. I want to be out and about. And I was like, where can I have a job that gets me a bit out and about? And I was like, sport sounds good. And then moved into motorsport because I was interested. It was just an interest, and I think it's right time, right place.
Fantastic. Well, there you go, another very different pathway. And Cece, I feel like you've had the most direct pathway because you've got an MSc in sustainable resources. So did you always know that you wanted to kind of work in sustainability, or was it just kind of, you were really drawn to study that at uni and then it just kind of snowballed from there?
I mean, I actually, for my undergrad, I also had no idea what I wanted to do. And I did this program called Arts and Sciences at UCL, which is, you get to pick and choose your own kind of journey. So there I ended up just kind of following the same kind of do what I enjoy. So I just did genetics and conservation science. And really from conservation science and wanting to sort of help animals, I was like, right, the actual way to do this is to work in sustainability. That's going to make the biggest impact. So from there, I moved on to my sustainability masters. And then when I found the Girls on Track Facebook group in 2020. So I think the last year before I graduated from my undergrad. And I got in touch with Christiana, the founder of Enovation, and sort of just building on that relationship, moving into my master's, and I was able to complete my dissertation within my master's with her and with Enovation. So through that, I then was able to convert that to a full-time position. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Well, congratulations to all three of you on making it to where you are now. How do you find that your skills are transferable from outside of motorsport to into motorsport as well? I think that's something that a lot of girls worry about. You pick a career and then you can't transition, but I think you guys prove that, there's always that opportunity to transition. And what are those skills that you think are most important that young people wanting to get into motorsport might want to build on?
I can go first. I think Parveer will agree with me, coming from all the corporate world, that there is legislation and indices and kind of things you have to do when you're working with big business that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing in sport, because it's fairly new. It's smaller companies or they're privately owned. So actually a lot of the stuff I learned as a consultant when I was doing kind of ESG reporting, like TCFD stuff, which is the kind of more things you have to do if you're a corporate, were really kind of transferable into the sport. I will say that I think it was almost helpful that I wasn't necessarily from a motorsport background, because I could tell people in a building who are in this motorsport world what everyone else was thinking and saying about them in the environmentalist world. So I actually think sometimes a fresh perspective coming from different industries can be really useful.
Fabulous. Parveer, anything to add there?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jess there, because I think like the whole ESG, environmental sustainability sector, the skills are so transferable because, as Jess said, it's very much so driven by legislation and statutory requirements. And you can kind of make it what you want to. So once you get a flavor of like what's out there, you can kind of say, let's implement this to be more sustainable. And it really depends on the business. It kind of just, you'd have to do like a whole assessment of the business, but from past experience, you already know what to implement. So the skills are really transferable. I think coming from the construction industry, that really helped, because the construction industry has one of the highest set of environmental standards, as they're known for being big polluters. So coming into motorsports with that knowledge base has been really helpful.
And finally, Cece, anything further?
I mean, just to say that obviously I'm very beginning of my career, so I haven't worked in really that many industries, but I did do a sustainability placement in the food industry. And there I also, because I'm more of a quant specialist, there again, I was just data crunching. So, at the end of the day, data crunching and sustainability is just data crunching. It's just the data that changes. So it's super, super transferable if you stay in sustainability.
Fantastic, thank you. We've actually had a question come in from one of our viewers at the minute, and Jess, you did touch on this a little bit earlier on in the webinar, but Ellie wants to know, what do you think is the biggest challenge when it comes to making motorsport sustainable? Is it kind of the engineering aspect, or is it the actual traveling, the events and whatnot, and everything that puts on? I mean, you did mention about, you've got to pick the bits of motorsport that are the most challenging, and so what do you find is the most difficult part of making motorsport sustainable?
It's a really good question, and obviously if it was easy, we'd have already achieved it. I think off the top of my head, being more sustainable involves changing behavior. You have to do things differently, and therefore if something has already been done in a certain way, people get very used to it, they get good at it. It's just the way it's always been, and people don't really question it. So you almost have to change that human behavior and activity to something a bit different. And I think it's like the convincing that the change is good, but also kind of supporting people on that role that's really difficult. It's not necessarily the answers, because we know a lot of what would make it more sustainable. It's that kind of, this is how we do it, this is how we change from how we've done it previously.
Cece, Parveer, anything further to add?
I think in the F1 world, there's loads of different stakeholders as well. So it's kind of, we have loads of different teams with their own ESG and sustainability strategy. Then you also have Formula One management, who kind of dictate where we travel to and in what order. And then we also have the FIA. So it's really kind of assembling a task force, I would say, that suits everyone's needs. So it's loads of different perspectives, but we should get there soon.
Absolutely, and I feel like that's a question that gets thrown at Formula One quite a lot, is why can't you do this, why can't you do that to make it more sustainable? But it is the fact that there are so many things to consider, there are so many people and groups to consider, but as you mentioned, it's absolutely heading in the right direction now. Cece, do you have anything just to add to that?
Just really to say that it is, I think, still an ongoing fight between kind of competition taking that first seat and sustainability kind of having to take a back seat at the moment. So kind of fighting that battle. And also just even just in Formula One, you know, teams operate under cost cap. So that's another kind of constraint that factors in greatly to the decisions that teams make.
Yeah, and just actually bringing up on the cost cap and the budget situation is making steps towards sustainability isn't always, you know, the cheapest option, which Jess, you know a lot about. Obviously, you've worked in that, you know, aspect of motorsport, so it can be very, very difficult to implement those changes when it can be a lot easier to go down a much less sustainable route.
Yeah, it can be tricky because you need the upfront cost or the upfront budget. I mean, a lot of sustainability changes actually save you money, and this is what like we always start with. It's like, well, maybe if you use less energy, you pay for less energy. People that have renewable energy, kind of solar now, are laughing at the prices of energy. So there's absolutely kind of savings, but then there is also like, yeah, you do have to put some money in towards it. And I think anyone in sustainability anywhere, not just in motorsport, will be like, I wish we had a bigger budget because I can do really cool things, but we do need to spend some money, and we probably need double the size of the team that we currently have, which is, I think is not a motorsport problem. That is a sustainability profession problem. But yeah, the more money you have, the better things you can do.
Absolutely. And how do you think that, this is to all three of you, but how do you think that working on sustainability in motorsport is going to change the automotive industry, and also the changes in the automotive industry? How do you think they can affect motorsport? Because they're two industries that are very interlinked with each other, using very similar technologies and kind of implementing all of the ideas from each other. How do you think those being so interlinked can help each other grow to be more sustainable?
I think it definitely comes from collaboration and learning from the experiences of others. I do think the automotive industry is a bit further ahead than where motorsports is. For example, Jaguar Land Rover have really good environmental standards. They require all of their suppliers to have an ISO 14001 certification, which is like top tier. So it's really just learning about their experience with sustainability and trying to implement it and see if it is replicable in the motorsports industry.
Cece, Jess?
One thing we're seeing at the moment is so as people have more electric vehicles, they want to compete in their electric vehicles, especially in the grassroots stuff. And we have a category called streetcar where you can turn up and compete in your streetcar, in the car that you use to get there. So we're actually looking at the moment at how we make it easier, how we make the regulations easier to compete in your vehicle. And if that's an electric car, great. And that's kind of from the mobility side to the sports side really made us think about kind of safety aspects and charging aspects. So that's been quite interesting for us to kind of catch up with. But it's also a massive opportunity in terms of the grassroots motorsport.
Yep, and we've just put a link in the chat there for you all to see, a link to Streetcar if that takes your fancy. If any of you fancy actually getting out in your road car, getting out in the vehicle you have sat on the driveway, you are absolutely able to do that. And there's Motorsport UK has this incredible initiative. So if you're interested in that, just click the link for a little bit more information. But just on that, we actually did have a question come in before. Do you think that motorsport will ever be fully electric in the future? I feel like this is quite a controversial question, because obviously there are series like Formula E, Extreme E, which are already operating under that electric model. But will motorsport as a whole ever be fully electric?
It is a fairly controversial question.
Yeah.
And I think it's controversial because we just don't know, but there's loads of really brilliant engineers that are much cleverer than me working on sustainable, like different forms of propulsion. So the amount of conversations I had around hydrogen this year, like since January, is like probably 3 times the amount of conversations I've had since I started work. We're talking a lot to fuel providers that are offering sustainable fuels, 100% sustainable fuels. They were extortionate about this time last year, and they're really coming down in price. So I think innovation will come forward. So I think what I imagine is that there will be multiple solutions. What we look at is net zero from kind of, how do we get to net zero? Like, that's the goal. And then lots of different ways we could get there. So I don't think it will be fully electric, but obviously there will be more electric, especially in our grassroots stuff. But that's not because I think people won't embrace the technology. I just think there will always be something new that comes along that is another option.
Fabulous. Right, Cece, anything to add there? I feel like you'd have a unique perspective on this.
Yeah, just to say, I mean, really agreeing with what Jess is saying, that I think being fully electric is not necessarily the 100% solution. You know, EVs in general, when compared to combustion engines, like, they bring a whole new set of challenges, you know, new end of life challenges that we have to deal with. So that might solve one sort of hotspot or one area of the issue, but not the whole issue. So yeah, I think some of them will be electric, others won't, others will find their own niche. But yeah, I think championships are still kind of finding the direction that they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And just Jess, you just talked about the net zero concept, and not specific to F1 at all, but how do you think the operational model of such competitions, such series where we travel around the world, how do you think that will change in the future to align with sustainability? Or do you think that's an aspect that doesn't need to change? Do you think there are other aspects that are more important than, you know, scrapping that whole traveling around the world model? To all three of you, really.
I think one thing, I'm stealing this from the founder of Enovation, so this is actually Christiana's point, give her credit. But I think she says that, like, it's not just for motorsport to come up with the solutions for travel on its own. Like, we do need the aviation industry, we do need the logistics industry, and all of them are working on it, but it is absolutely not a problem we can solve on our own. Because if things need to get there, it's the businesses that get them there that need to work as well. Where we can be really useful is if they're in our supply chain, we can ask them really difficult questions so that we can kind of push that it's important for us, and then that they understand that that is what we want to see if they're going to continue to be our supplier of choice.
Absolutely. And also, we did kind of mention before that there are lots of aspects of motorsport that do need to have that focus. Jess, you did mention, I'm picking up on all the things you're mentioning because they're feeding into the questions that we're getting. But Esther's asked a question about the 100% sustainable fuel. Is that a massive part of changing the sustainability of motorsport, or does it make up only a small percentage of the carbon footprint of, you know, motorsport in general? I mean, Parveer, you might be able to answer this one as well.
Yeah, so right now the way emissions are defined are scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So in terms of the actual racing fuel that we use within our scope 1 and 2, in comparison to something like, I don't know, electricity consumption, it's like minuscule. So there are, you know, there are other areas in which we could reduce our carbon footprint hugely through like energy conservation campaigns, making sure all of our electricity procured is from renewable sources. So there are other areas in which we can have a huge impact.
And I think just to pick up on
go
that.
on, Jess. Yeah, sorry. Don't mean to interrupt.
We have some of our disciplines where the fuel is the biggest part of the carbon emissions because they don't have spectators. So it's people that turn up in the cars that they drive there. They compete and then they go home. And that's a fairly high amount of our events, especially if you look at hill climbs and vintage cars. So I think it's discipline specific, and where sustainable fuels can have the biggest influence is not necessarily in the F1 where it's a huge event where there's lots of people kind of arriving to a place. The one thing that excites me about sustainable fuels, I think it's a really opportunity for us to lead. and to kind of be involved in that innovation bit. But yeah, as the question, kind of the person that asked the question said, like, there is other areas we can look at, and that's why I try and like talk to all the different disciplines about what would make a difference to them, and how they can lead it on their own, rather than just kind of give catch-all solutions for everyone, because obviously everyone's impacts are different.
Yeah, and finally, we've got another question from Grace. What is your opinion kind of with carbon offsetting versus reducing emissions? Is it a viable way to kind of reduce the carbon footprint of motorsport, or is the reducing emissions a much more important or much more sustainable and long-term version as opposed to carbon offsetting? Cece, why don't we come to you?
Yeah, so I mean, offsetting is kind of where we talk about being carbon neutral, and that's a good step in sort of going in the right direction to achieve net zero. But in achieving net zero, you actually need to reduce your emissions all the way down until you're only emitting things that are absolutely unavoidable. And then you can then use offsetting as a tool to help mitigate those unavoidable emissions. So you can't solely rely on offsetting. You need to also look at ways to reduce your emissions.
Jess, Parveer, anything to add?
I think Cece summarised that perfectly.
Yeah, I wanted to give like clapping emoji, like that is what it is, like reduce, avoid and reduce first. And if you are going to offset, be really vigilant about the offsets that you do choose to use, because there are so much choices and some are much better than others.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. We have another question as well, which is kind of going off the sustainability niche, but just about advice in getting in the world of motorsport, whether it is in sustainability or not.
So when I applied, I'm just going to talk from experience here because I'm not sure how anyone else got into.
No, that's what we want to hear. We're all very nosy. We want to know all about the journey.
So I just saw the job on LinkedIn. I think when you're quite active on LinkedIn within a specific field, you get advertised lots of jobs. And I just saw the job on LinkedIn, read the job description, and was like, okay. And it was just an application through a CV. But yeah, I would definitely advise kind of following all of the teams or any sector of motorsport you're interested in on LinkedIn, because there are always jobs available and people being recruited through LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is one of our main channels for recruitment. And also just checking the team websites, or the websites of anything you're interested in. There's also a LinkedIn page called Motorsport Jobs, or Jobs in Motorsport, which advertises different jobs within the sector.
And beyond sustainability, like there's so many different ways you can get involved. So there's 720 clubs in the UK. Other countries have their own clubs. There's so many volunteering opportunities. So you can volunteer at events as an official or a marshal. All of that will build your baseline understanding of motorsport before applying for jobs. I mean, I sit there and like I said, before I joined, I knew very little, and I didn't try and pretend that I knew more than I did, because I didn't want to later be caught out about it. But now I'm in it, I realize that there are so many more ways I could have gone about it that would have just made me kind of have better knowledge of the motorsport, and would just help me. Well, they help me now understand where the problems are in the sport.
And finally, Cece.
I mean, yeah, I got in via the Girls on Track community, and it's obviously an amazing place to find people working in the industry. So I got in through networking. So I would say definitely, get to know the people in the community, reach out to people who, have a job that you might be interested in getting to know their day-to-day operations or any advice from them. So yeah, I'd just say reach out. If you never ask, you'll never know.
Absolutely. And we've put the Girls on Track link to the community page in the chat as well. So if any of you happen to be on this webinar already and you're not a member of the Girls on Track community, do join us. We've got over 6,500 members now and growing strong. And there's always people to ask for advice. There's always people who will have done, maybe the same university course that you want to do, or have maybe done an internship, or will know things. So it's a great community people to have. Networking is so important, as all three of you have mentioned. So yeah, great stuff. Let's move on again to another question that we had come in previously. If you were to begin your motorsport career again, what would you do differently, or what would you maybe tell your younger self before you got into motorsport?
That's a bit of a tricky one for me to answer, because I've only been here for 6 months. So right now, I don't think I would say anything. I'd have to give it a bit more time before
we'll come back to you in a year.
Yeah.
I think I'd pick up on Cece's earlier point about like reach out to people because people want to help. I always think I was scared of asking for help because I should know things, or I thought people would be too busy, or if they didn't respond, I'd take it personally. And I think actually just reaching out and making it really clear what you're trying to do and what you want to do and what help you need, that's also really helpful. Especially as people have said, the Girls on Track community, women in motorsport in general, it's a very friendly place and people are really happy to share. And ultimately, this career is one where we want more of us. We want more people to care about what we're doing, even if it's in a job that's not necessarily sustainability in the job title, but it's a part of your role. So I will always reach out. I slipped into Parveer's LinkedIn because I saw that she had a similar job, and I was like, oh, we're doing similar things, let's chat, because we can learn from each other. So I do it now a lot, but I wish I'd done it a lot earlier in my career.
And Cece?
I mean, yeah, I'm also, I've only been here for 6-7 months, but I think I wanted to get into motorsport for a couple of years, and I'd say to myself to be more patient. I think work at getting that sustainability experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be motorsport, but everything you do is going to be helpful. So yeah, just to be more patient.
Okay, fabulous. And what is the most rewarding part of your roles at the minute? Is it seeing the sustainability kind of be implemented? Is it the excitement of working in motorsport? What is the best part of your roles?
I think for me, I'm just so motivated about being part of the group where effective change is occurring for the benefit of the planet. So just in general, coming to work, knowing that I'm working on something that's going to improve the company's, sustainability, that just motivates me to wake up in the morning and I just know that it will pay off in the end, because we're all coming together in the interest of sustainability and sustainable development. So yeah, I think that's the most rewarding thing for me.
Oh, that was very wholesome. Cece?
Yeah, so it's just, I think one part of it is, flagging out things that the client won't necessarily know from a sustainability perspective that I know because I flagged it or we flagged it up is actually, having an impact on, the planet. And then the second thing of working in motorsport specifically, I guess, is that I think it's a tough industry and people expect you to be tough. And I've just come off the back of a really tough deadline, so I think that's also been really rewarding, is working really hard and knowing that what you produce is good and it's going to make a difference.
And Jess?
My favorite thing is when I'm in a meeting and someone says something that we've spoken about recently that's either about EDI or sustainability, and I didn't have to say it. They picked up on it previously, and then they're like, this is important. There's sometimes in the office where I hear conversations and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you, because it sometimes it can be hard. You feel I'm really impatient. So I'm I want to make change now. I want everyone to do things now. And then, I have to learn with myself that not everyone is has exactly the same priorities as me. But then when someone else says something oh, we should think about this, it makes me really happy.
Oh, those are really wholesome answers. I was like smiling the whole time that you were talking about it, because I can just feel the passion radiating from all three of you about exactly what you do and how much you love it. And I think that is really the message that we want to send as well to all the girls on track community, is that like when you're doing something that you love, like this is how you respond, this is how you feel when you're in that role. So yeah, find your perfect role in motorsport, because we want to see the passion radiate from everyone. Before we kind of start wrapping this up, I'm going to throw to Jess, who's going to talk, because you've already just mentioned about volunteering in motorsport and how you can volunteer, not just in the UK, but any countries, because I know that Girls on Track is a very worldwide community. So guys, if you are looking for volunteering roles, you'll be able to find them wherever you are in the world. But Jess, you have an initiative, the environmental volunteering. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really new initiative, and we're basically going to try it out and see if it works. But as you've heard me say, there's 720 clubs in the UK. We want each of them to, we've created a carbon calculator with the help of some consultants, and we want each of the clubs to measure the carbon footprint of their events. So a lot of the things that we've been talking about today, like spectators, like the fuel on track, how many competitors do you have? And we're looking for a small group of volunteers to begin with, because we're going to try this out, where we'll pair you with a motorsport club in the UK to help them understand how they can measure their footprint. As I said earlier, sometimes they just don't have the capacity to do it, or they're a little bit nervous about what it means, or they haven't necessarily done data collection before. And we really want to kind of join up people that are interested and passionate about sustainability with our clubs that need some help ultimately. And I think hopefully it'll be kind of an entry level way of getting some experience in what working in sustainability in motorsport is like. So valuable for our volunteers, but also massively beneficial for our clubs that will learn from everyone in the school. So in the follow-up email, there's just an expression of interest. There is a couple of things that we need, like you do need to be over 18 to be able to support us. And then I'll give further information for anyone that's up for it. But hopefully we'll get some interest there. And it's also a bit of an opportunity to try out, to see if you want to join us in sustainable motorsport.
Perfect. And well, we've just put the link in the chat as well for the survey. So once this webinar is complete, if you could complete the survey and give us a bit of feedback, and then you can obviously sign up to Jess's initiative if you are interested and you want to get involved. I'm going to finish this with one final question to you guys. Maybe it's controversial, I don't know. Do you think that it's possible for motorsport to be 100% sustainable ever, even if it's in 10 years, if it's in 50 years? Is it possible?
I think from, just a perspective of like human evolution and technological innovation and the stresses that we're facing right now from an environmental perspective, we need to come up with solutions to those problems. So as society develops and we head towards sustainable development, then I would like to think hopefully we will be, because that's what's needed.
Yeah, I think, Steph, you might have heard me say this before, but we need to get to net zero. That, as Parveer says, like that is what we need to do, and we need to find solutions to get there. Is it down the corner, like round the corner in motorsport, and do we have all the answers? Absolutely not. And how I like to think about it is that like this brings a lot of people joy. It is a lot of people's, it's great for their physical, mental well-being. It's what people do in their spare time. And I don't want to necessarily have to limit that. So I think that like everyone's allowed to do some sort of polluting in a little bit in order to like, so I don't want to go around being like, we have to stop it, this is banned, like that's bad, because it has so many positive impacts. But at the same time, people can't keep acting as they always have done if we're going to meet the solutions that we need, and there does need to be some change to trigger that.
And last but not least, again, Cece.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with Parveer and Jess. I think in getting to net zero, I think motorsport has to find solutions in order to sort of justify its kind of in a way. You know, in a world or scenario where climate change impacts are only sort of becoming more and more evident, I think certain things are going to have to find a way to sort of exist in that kind of scenario. So yeah, I think pressure will kind of force motorsport's hand, but I think that we'll get there.
It's exactly like you guys have mentioned. It is not just solely motorsport. You know, we've got to all work together with lots of other industries to ensure that, you know, sustainability is achievable. But thank you so much for your insights, and thank you so much for giving up your time, and thank you all for listening. We will post this recording onto the Girls on Track UK Facebook page, and for all of the community to talk. If you have any more questions, pop them in the Facebook page as well. I'm sure these three wonderful women will be happy to answer any further questions that you do have. If you think about one after the webinar is done, just pop it in the Facebook group. But yeah, a massive thank you to the three of you for giving up your time. Best of luck with, you know, your careers and the push for sustainability in the future. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much,
What we're going to do.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you to you guys, and thank you to you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you for the next webinar. Bye.